Hriddhi Yoga Vibhavite. Yogino Yam Prapasyanti. Yogesham Tam Natosmyaham.
Yogarandita Kalmano.
Yogarandita Kamano. Hriddhi Yoga Vibhavite.
Yogino Yam Prapasyanti.
Yogino Yam Prapasyanti.
Yogesham Tam Natosmyaham.
Yogesham Tam Natosmyaham.
Yogarandita Karmano.
Yogarandita Kamano.
Hriddhi Yoga Vibhavite.
Hriddhi Yoga Vibhavite.
Yogino Yam Prapasyanti.
Yogino Yam Prapasyanti.
Yogesham Tam Natosmyaham.
Yogesham Tam Natosmyaham.
Yogarandita Karmano.
Whose reactions to fruitive activities have been burnt up by Bhakti Yoga. Hriddhi, within the core of the heart. Yoga Vibhavite, completely purified and clean. Yogina, mystics who are competent. Yam, unto the personality of Godhead who? Prapasyanti, directly see. Yogesham, unto that Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Master of all mystic yoga. Tam, unto him. Natasmi, offering obeisances. Aham, I. Translation and purport. By His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the Supreme, the Super Soul, the Master of all mystic yoga, who is seen in the core of the heart by perfect mystics when they are completely purified and freed from the reactions of fruitive activity by practicing Bhakti Yoga. Purport: the king of the elephants, Gajendra, simply accepted that there must be someone who has created this cosmic manifestation and has supplied its ingredients. This should be admitted by everyone, even the most determined atheists. Why then do non-devotees and atheists not admit this? The reason is that they are polluted by the reactions of their fruitive activities. One must be freed from all the dirt accumulated within the heart due to fruitive activities performed one after another. One must wash off this dirt by practicing Bhakti Yoga. Yoga Randita Kamana. As long as one is covered by material modes of ignorance and passion, there is no possibility of understanding the Supreme Lord. Tadarajas tamobhava kama loba dayas chaye. Srimad Bhagavatam 1:219. When one is free from the modes of ignorance and passion, one becomes free from the lowest qualities, kama and lobha, lust and greed. Nowadays, there are so many yoga schools to encourage people in developing their lusty desires and greed through the practice of yoga. People are therefore very much fond of so-called yoga practice. The actual practice of yoga, however, is described here. As authoritatively stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam 12.13.1, Jyavana vastita tadgatena manasa pasyanti yam yogina. A yogi is one who always meditates on the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is also confirmed in the Brahma Samhita 538. Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena Santa Sadeva Hridayeshu Vilokayanti Yam Shama Sundaram Achinta Guna Swarupam Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is Shamasundar, Krishna himself, with inconceivable, innumerable attributes, whom the pure devotees see in their heart of hearts with the eye of devotion tinged with the salve of love. The Bhakti Yogi constantly sees Shamasundar, beautiful Lord Krishna, with his blackish bodily hue. Because the king of the elephants, Gajendra, thought himself an ordinary animal, he thought himself unfit to see the Lord. In his humility, he thought that he could not practice yoga. In other words, how can those who are like animals in the bodily concept of life, who have no purity of consciousness, practice yoga? In the present day, people who have no control over their senses, who have no understanding of philosophy, and do not follow religious principles or rules and regulations, are nonetheless pretending to be yogis. This is the greatest anomaly in the practice of mystic yoga. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nivasesha Saraswati Panchakalpatrubhishcha Kripasindu Vivachapati Tanam. So coming to the end of Gajendra's prayers, he actually speaks for 27 verses, quite a lot of prayers. And he speaks a lot of philosophy. And the Prabhupada says in the Prabhupada, he's not an ordinary elephant by any means. He must have been a super advanced devotee in his previous life. And so this is manifesting now in his prayers. Sorry, I'll try, yeah. So I'm just going to go through the purport and make a few comments. So Prabhupada says, the first point Prabhupada makes is that there must be somebody, logically, there must be somebody who has created this cosmic manifestation. So if we go in the prasadam room and we see a beautiful cake on the table, all decorated with cream and fruit and nice layers, we immediately, who has made this? Immediately we ask, who has made this?
We know who made it. It's Nandini.
We might say, oh, did Nandini make it? It looks like one of Nandini's cakes. So we assume that something as simple as a cake has a creator. So how can it be that something as complicated as the universe, and the astrophysicists, they admit it's complicated. It's not really, it's beyond their comprehension. They try to understand. But how can it not have a creator? It's just logical. We always see, whatever we see, we know somebody who made it. This table, or this harmonium, or this camera, or this, anything, we know. So why? It's baffling as to why people think that they can have a universe that, well, it just happened. It just happened. It's just that somebody, no, nobody made it. It's just there. This should be admitted by everyone, even the most determined atheist. Why then do the non-devotees and atheists not admit this? Then Prabhupada asks the question and then gives the answer. This is a preaching technique, is that you anticipate the questions, the doubts, and then you answer them. Before the person actually asks them, you address them, because you can anticipate. So why? Why do they not admit? The reason is that they are polluted by the reactions of their fruitive activities. One must be freed from all dirt accumulated in the heart due to fruitive activities performed one after another, life after life. So Prabhupada said there's no problem to perceive Krishna. It's that we don't want to perceive him. That's a real problem. The problem is that Krishna's invisible, he's hiding himself. But it's that we don't want to see him. Why don't we want to see him? Because we want something else. Yeah? These desires in the heart for other things. There's karma and lobha, there's lust and greed for other things. This is a conditioned soul, has other desires than to serve Krishna. As long as one is covered by material modes of ignorance and passion, there is no possibility of understanding the Supreme Lord. One must wash off this dirt by practicing Bhakti Yoga. So this is the dirt. We talk about Chaitadopana Marjanam, cleaning the heart. And Maharaj is speaking on Wednesday, he was saying, but we have to purify the consciousness in order to understand the truth, to understand the spiritual knowledge. So the knowledge and the austerity, they go together. And the austerity of controlling the senses, and then you can start to absorb the knowledge. And Prabhupada quotes this, it's a famous verse, and he actually quotes this in the Bhagavad Gita. He quotes the whole section of verses. This verse is one from the whole section that he quotes in the purport to chapter 7, verse 1. So it's obviously an important verse of all the verses. It's one of the ones he chose to quote in the Bhagavad Gita purports. Sadara jastamo bhava kamaloba dayaschaye. When one is freed, so this is Prabhupada's paraphrase of the verse, when one is freed from the modes of ignorance and passion, one becomes free from the lowest qualities, karma and lobha, lust and greed. This is why it's important to be in goodness, to get away from this karma and lobha. The mind is full of these desires, and generally in society these desires are inflamed. They're inflamed by the association of modern society, and especially the media, always increasing our lust and desires for material things, with advertising. Everywhere is a lot of advertising. And your mobile phone now is always adverts. If you go on some website, next thing there's all these adverts coming because they've picked up your mobile phone number or sending you all these tailored adverts. I get adverts for wrinkle cream and partners for people who are already being married and now divorced, or crazy things. So the idea is materialists want to increase their desires, they want to increase their lust, because then they have more taste for material enjoyment and they can supposedly enjoy more. They want to ramp up their material life and get more things and buy more things and increase the economy. And so modern society, as Prabhupada says, is based on passion and ignorance. But spiritual life is a completely different endeavor. Prabhupada gave the example of a lady who had a fever, and she called the doctor, and the doctor said, "Oh yeah, you're very sick, you've got to have a fever of 101, very, very bad." And she said, "Well, maybe you should also see this, maidservant, she's also sick." And maidservant, he measured her temperature, and 102. And the lady was all, "Oh, how I'm 101, and how come she's got 102? It's because she had this idea that the higher the fever, there was something better about having a higher fever. So it illustrates the point of the materialists having this thinking that the more materially involved you are, the more material things you have, the more material prestige and possessions and enjoyment and you have, the better it is. It's more prestigious. Like Maharaj is describing, we might be able to have this wonderful house in the Côte d'Azur, and all the things that you might have to go in the house, and all the facilities that you might be provided with, and oh yes. So from a materialist, this is a dream, yeah, to have all these wonderful material facilities. But a devotee understands that it's an illusion, yeah? It's an illusory thing, and it's a lesser thing to the taste of Krishna consciousness. So you can become convinced of this by associating with devotees. You can become convinced of how material things are transitory and illusory, and it's not worth working for these things. Because anyway, when you get a body, you get a certain quota of enjoyment, you get a certain quota of facilities. Tena chatchena bunjita. Everybody has their quota. For a certain number of breaths, they have a certain, experiences that are already. So if you try to change your situation or improve it, you're actually wasting your time because you can't actually improve it. People might do the lottery and they win lots of money, but next thing it's all gone. They're not really meant to have that enjoyment, that facility. People make all arrangements, and then the next thing, something happens, and they're not able to enjoy it for some reason or another. So devotee, he enjoys in a different way, and he enjoys in a real way. Not conditioned souls, due to this lust and greed, they want to enjoy sense pleasure, which means stimulating the senses, the senses of the body. But this is not real pleasure. The real pleasure is for the soul feeling connection with Krishna. That's the real pleasure, and we feel this pleasure by hearing the Shastra. Actually, the pleasure for a devotee is in the Shastra, because the Shastra is non-different to Krishna. You hear verses like Lord Chaitanya. He used to hear verses. He used to have Sarup Damodar recite verses, and then he would go into oh, okay, we're not Lord Chaitanya, but we can understand that the Shastra is our source of shelter. It's all the endless aspects of Krishna can be perceived through hearing verses, through reading verses, through hearing devotees talk about verses and explain verses. And this is actually the enjoyment for the soul, and this is why Vaishnavas will sit and they will chant prayers, they will chant Vaishnava songs, they will, principally Hare Krishna mantra, which contains all mantras, the Maha mantra. So that the pleasure is there in connecting with Krishna, which is real yoga. Yoga means to connect. So the real yoga is when you connect with Krishna through the medium of Shastra, of a spiritual sound vibration. This is the method of, Prabhupada says, you don't see Krishna with your eyes, you see him with your ears. Krishna has these multifunctional senses. Krishna can see with his ears and eat with his eyes and smell things with his foot or whatever. All his senses are interchangeable, but we can actually hear with we can see with our ears. We can see with our ears by hearing the Shastra. So when you chant verses, you're actually connecting with Krishna, and there's a special feeling of having this spiritual food, spiritual enlightenment by kirtan. And by kirtan doesn't mean just Hare Krishna mantra. Kirtan also means any talking about Krishna. any shastra or even preaching to somebody. If you're preaching directly about Krishna, this is also kirtan. It's a broad understanding of kirtan. So now then Prabhupada in the purport, he starts to explain what real yoga is and what real yoga isn't. And he's saying nowadays many people do yoga, hatha yoga, or sometimes they get into some Ashtanga yoga or even Kundalini yoga, so-called. And it's very popular. And people who don't know Shastra, people who don't know Prabhupada's books, or haven't been enlightened, they think that this is something spiritual. Often they think it's something spiritual. Doing yoga asanas and concentrating the mind and doing some kind of impersonal meditation and, I'm God, we're all God, and we're all one, and some mantras they may have. But Prabhupada says it's not possible. It's not possible to actually practice yoga. The first thing you have to do to practice yoga is yam and niyam. There are 8 steps to the yoga. It's described clearly in the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. And the first thing is the rules and regulations. The yam and niyam means that you do and you don't do. Celibacy is not a very popular thing. Most people are not interested in serious celibacy. But this is the first thing you have to practice in order to be successful in yoga. And then you have to sit down in on some deerskin in a cave in the Himalayas or in some secluded place. Yeah. And then you have to practice pranayama. So people can't do the niyam and niyam. They can't follow the rules and regulations. And most people can't do pranayama. And then they have to do pratyahara. Pratyahara is the 4th stage. Pratyahara means withdrawing the senses. So it means you no longer connect your consciousness with this sensory input, and there's no longer the material desires to engage the senses. You move back, inside yourself. You move back from the senses and the sensory input. You minimize the sensory input. You control your senses by sitting still, and the different asanas are meant to still the mind. The sitting positions are meant to still the mind. They're not an end in themselves. People think the asanas are the end in themselves, but actually it's a mechanical way of controlling the mind. So then you can withdraw from the sensory input because the mind has become peaceful. And then you can start to meditate properly. You can meditate on the Lord in the heart, and eventually you can see the Lord in the heart and get to the point of samadhi. And it's a mechanical process of becoming spiritually advanced. And it works, but not in Kali Yuga. It doesn't work in Kali Yuga because people aren't qualified to start it. Maybe a very, very rare soul could do it. But it's not necessary. Even if you can do it, it's not necessary, because all you need to do is pick up your bead bag, chant Hare Krishna, which is practical. It's practical and feasible for anybody. Anybody at Prabhupada, and it's also in Shastra. One verse, it says that anybody can, no matter what background, they can take to Krishna consciousness. I think it's Kirata Hunandra Pulkasar, something like that. Anybody who's got a human body, and Prabhupada says even a dog, Prabhupada some places he says even a dog can take to Krishna consciousness. In that recording that Prabhupada made, the first recording, Prabhupada says that even a dog can take to Krishna consciousness by association. But it's also there in Chaitanya Leela, there was a dog. So anyway, the practice of Krishna consciousness, because if you concentrate on the Hare Krishna mantra, You're already on the highest stage of yoga because you're connecting with Krishna. You're connecting with Krishna by hearing his name. Prabhupada says, just try and hear yourself chant sincerely. Just try and hear yourself. So it's difficult to actually hear yourself chanting, because as soon as you try to hear the chanting, Hare Krishna, the mind goes off. Immediately just goes off and thinks about something material. Yato, nischality. So whenever the mind goes off, you have to try to pull it back to hearing the chanting again. And then it goes off, and then you try to pull it back, and then it goes off. And this is the yoga that we are supposed to perform. We're not really supposed to chant Hare Krishna like Hare Krishna, and kind of have the mantra running in the background while we think about all sorts of material things, or we look at our WhatsApp messages and Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. But these things happen. But the real yoga is to actually hear each word of the mantra. And if we actually do that with a desire to see Krishna, it's not that we're just thinking, I have to do this, or Hare Krishna, and it'll help me, Hare Krishna. But actually, if we have a desire to see Krishna, desire to connect with Krishna, and call out to him, often if we're in a difficult situation, having some bad experience, it helps. It actually helps us, because we're more likely to call out feelingly to Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. So everybody was chanting feelingly last week, because they were thinking about Bhakti Charu Maharaj, and how they didn't want him to leave his body, and then he left his body, and now we won't see him again, and Hare Krishna, they were chanting feelingly, maybe. And so this feeling in your chanting, is for me, and my understanding is that it actually helps you concentrate, and it actually helps you connect with Krishna if you do it with some feeling. And then, because Krishna is a person, he's very much a person, he's always with us. Prabhupada said Krishna is always with you, like you always have the sky. You can always see the sky. Krishna is always there. Krishna pervades our body. Krishna is in our heart. He's everything, every atom of our body is made of Krishna's energy. In fact, it's amazing that people can't perceive Krishna, because he's all pervading at all times. Sometimes people say, oh, can you see God? Or have you seen God? Well, that means there's an assumption that God's visible everywhere, isn't it? You can go to somebody anywhere and you say, can you see God? Have you seen God? It means that we assume that we know that we can see God wherever we go. It is possible to see him. So, it's amazing that people don't see him. But it's because of this lust and greed to see other things that we don't see him. So we concentrate on the mantra, and then that's the highest form of yoga. Yoginam apisavisham magatenam to atmana shraddhavam bhajate yomam yame sakta. Last line. That's my way. Yes, thank you. So we're already on the highest platform of yoga if we chant nicely. We chant Hare Krishna and focus on Krishna. So this verse, Prabhupada quotes this very nice verse, Premanjana Charita Bhakti Valochanena. So Premanjana, the salve of love. That means if you have love, if your eyes are smeared with love for Krishna, you can see him. Okay. So this yoga can be good doing yoga can be good for health. The yoga asanas can be good for health. I do some yoga every day. It's not that I'm against yoga, but it should not be seen as a spiritual practice or any kind of genuine process. It's some exercises for health, that's okay. But if people start thinking that this is actually a spiritual process, they're cheating themselves and each other. You know, it's cheaters and the cheated. And people often, they do this yoga to make money. And that's also okay if it's, you know, if it's the understanding is it is good for health, but if it starts to be some kind of, you know, spiritual, with, you know, bogus yogis teaching people and, you know, telling them all sorts of impersonal things and then training them to be actually inimical to Krishna, then it's counterproductive. It's actually counterproductive. So we need to control our senses. We need to understand the process of Krishna consciousness, and in this way practice real yoga. Okay. Do you have any question?
Probably, yeah.
Go ahead.
So, normally what Buddhists used to do is go meditate and absorb themselves, right? In a sense, that is kind of selfish, because they're doing it for his pleasure. So if I'm chanting Hare Krishna, for example, one day, and I get this absorption and I'm feeling in trance, is it okay?
Yes, it's good if you're chanting properly and you're chanting in, you know, under the instructions of a spiritual master. Yeah, if you're chanting your 16 rounds, but we shouldn't chant thinking that we're chanting for Krishna's pleasure. If we derive some pleasure or some benefit, that's, you know, but we're chanting for Krishna's pleasure. That's the primary thing. Krishna likes it, therefore we do it. So we get, obviously there are side effects. You feel more peaceful, you feel more happy, satisfied. You know, you become more in control of your senses and you become more competent to do things. You learn to be able to do things. You're like, you know, sitting and giving a class. Why? How is it I'm doing that? It must be because I'm chanting. Krishna is helping me. Dressing the deities or cooking, all the things that we do is coming, Krishna's empowering us because we're chanting. So Krishna, all sorts of things happen when you chant. You end up living in a chateau in France, you know. So things happen because of the chanting. But we're doing it because it's pleasing to Krishna, or we may not be able to relate to that. We maybe just do it on the order of the spiritual master. I'm suffering, so then I find a source of knowledge, spiritual master, Prabhupada in the books, or my spiritual master in Parampara from Prabhupada tells me I should chant. Prabhupada tells us people to chant in the books. I started chanting because it said in the book to chant Hare Krishna. Started chanting of it. So Prabhupada instructed me through his book. So we're chanting. So we can chant because we're suffering. I was suffering, so I started chanting, and it started helping me. I was thinking, oh, this is really good, because I'm feeling better by the chanting. And people can chant, but that motivation is not the pure motivation. The pure motivation is just to chant for Krishna's pleasure. But obviously, if it motivates us to chant, you know, save myself from hell, Hare Krishna, because I would have gone to hell. I was in hell already, actually. I was already in hell, but people, you know, because they're performing sinful activities, then they suffer. And so then they because they don't have knowledge, they perform more sinful activities and they suffer more. So they need a process to help them stop the sinful activities and, you know, get some taste so they can refrain from more sinful activities. So this is a Hare Krishna mantra, and it's suitable because it has a powerful effect quickly. It does have a, you probably know now you started chanting. It has a profound effect quickly. Because in this age people are very short-lived and they don't have much intelligence. They can't read the Vedas and sit and do this Ashtanga yoga, but they can chant Hare Krishna in kirtan. Kirtan is Prabhupada said, for the masses is kirtan. You know, group, big sankirtan. Anybody can join, even if they're not chanting, not following any principles, or they can take prasad and kirtan and enjoy spiritual life. That's what Prabhupada wanted. He wanted mass sankirtan and mass prasadam distribution. But yes, it starts with, we have to ourselves purify ourselves so that we become competent to help others. And then that's really pleasing to Krishna. Krishna is pleased if we chant, yeah? For his pleasure, we chant for his pleasure and we save ourselves. But the real thing that's pleasing to Krishna is when we help others come to the chanting. Prabhupada wanted people to make a commitment to chanting. So if we help other people come to that point, bring them to Krishna consciousness, introduce them to chanting, get them to make a commitment to follow the chanting, very pleasing to Krishna. Krishna will be pleased. And then our lives will be successful. Yeah. So it's a kind of roundabout way of being selfish.
I think it does, speaking about asanas, it does help how you sit and chant your round.
Yes, yes.
But he's actually said that when you sit down on the floor, it's very easy to think about God.
Well, maybe it's
There's
easier.
There's no how to say, fixed rules. It's not.
Yeah.
But it does help if you sit, especially with your back straight.
No,
on
it's
the floor.
true.
It does help.
Because if you sit like this, cross-legged, and you have your arms on your knees, then you're automatically, your back is straight, isn't it?
If the back is not straight, the blood circulation is not really functioning.
Yeah, and the life airs, these life airs that don't spin
You fall
properly.
asleep,
And
maybe.
Yeah, back to Siddhanta, he would sit like that, and he would sit with his bead back like this, and he sat there for 10 years, I think, chanting. Chanting. I think he must have slept a bit at night, but he did this vrata for 10 years.
And Krishna says you should sit with your back straight. He says.
Yeah. The eyes half closed as well.
You don't really use that part of the back, the lower part, so it becomes numb. And that's why people have back problems. But when you sit
If
like
it's straight.
this, you have to use it.
Yeah, and your pelvis goes forward when you straighten your back, yeah.
But it's not
And your
that
shoulders go back.
You don't have to be stiff all the time. You can move it a bit.
And you can also go like this and stay in the position. It's true. If you see Radhanath Swami.
That doesn't really move the lower back. The problem is you're usually down on the lower back, and you have to have this little movement back and forwards in the lower back. This is technique, but it's good to learn a little technique.
I don't quite understand what you're saying, but
No.
but maybe you can explain later.
It's a little subtle because if I try to demonstrate, you will hardly see it.
Yeah, we can explain it
I'm doing
again.
it now, but you won't notice much. It's down here, right down where the spine connects to the hip. That has to move a little
Okay,
bit.
yeah. Okay.
It shouldn't be numb. Not just forget about it. People just forget about it and they go like this.
It's very technical, but
It's obviously you've thought about it, how to sit and chant. Yeah, obviously it is all these things. I have fine-tuning the chanting is making it as favourable as possible, like chanting in the early morning and chanting with Tulsi, chanting with Srila Prabhupada, chanting with other devotees. These are all things that help. Chanting the Tulsi prayers before we chant, see the deities before we chant. All these things. Prabhupada designed the program for us. Anything else? Srimad Bhagavati?
So it might be not the best way, but it helps a lot doing physical yoga to maintain your body healthy, to
Yeah.
do a lot of spiritual work. So in a way, it can be implemented on a daily basis.
It can be. There's sometimes, if you have a very sedentary service, There was one devotee, and he's left his body now, but he was like the main translator of the Bhagavatam, called Gopi Puranadana, and he was like really highly respected, very, very highly respected, very, very learned devotee. And he was teaching Sanskrit and training up boys to translate, and to translate other scriptures. And they used to sit for hours, learning the Sanskrit. But every now and again, he would get them to stand up and do some yoga.
It's good if you do really hard physical labor also. It's very good.
Yeah.
It balances the body. If you use one muscle too much, after the yoga, you're kind of in balance again.
Well, you get pain sometimes if you use a muscle. But people go to the gym now, but actually what they should be doing is digging the garden and bringing the water and milking the cow and, you know. But they pay all this money to go to the gym because their life is all press buttons. They just press buttons for everything, and, you know. And they don't use any energy, and then the bodies are stiff and painful, and so then they have to go to the gym. Or the fat, you get fat. But if people lived a normal life of growing food, yes, they wouldn't need to go to the gym. It's a completely upside down, topsy-turvy civilization that we live in, or that we're products of, or were products of.
There's a good word for these kind of people. Couch potatoes.
Couch potatoes, yeah. Couches are very unhealthy as well. He wants to ask a question. Your arm was going up, no?
Yeah.
You're just stretching, no? You had your arm up.
Thank you very much for what you mentioned. For me, I see for my chanting is essential my consciousness to chant in a mood of gratitude, and it is often very difficult to get in that mood because my mind is often goes to analyzing and criticizing, and especially I get often angry of my superiors, and I get into thinking, oh, he said about him this, and he is not qualified, and all this. So how to get out of this? How to just let it go? It seems to
I don't know.
break myself.
If you find out, you tell me. I always read. Yeah, I always read a bit before I chant. I read a few verses and purports before I chant, and that helps my mind come closer to a little bit closer to Krishna. Do you ever read in the morning, or you just start chanting immediately?
Yeah, I used to. Then one of my Shiksha Gurus told me, just chant, don't read.
Yeah. Well, we chant a bit of the Namamrita every morning, isn't it? We chant this. But I find it helps me to read a bit. Because I think, oh, this is amazing. Prabhupada's amazing. Yes, I want to be a devotee. I want to be a devotee. Hare Krishna. You know? You have to want to be a devotee, otherwise it's just like a chore. 16 rounds. Here we go again. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. And, you have to want to do it. You have to understand. You know, it's good for me, spirit.
Maybe because he's a bit of a jnani type, our good friend. You're a bit of a jnani type, so maybe it's better for you just to chant. It's individual. You know?
Yes, it is.
For some people, it's good, maybe just to read, but for others, maybe because the danger is that you just get absorbed and you forget about chanting.
Yeah, I think both is.
It's you know.
You can keep a sloka in your mind while you chant, because the mind can multi-track. You can think of a sloka while you chant. Some people do that. I know Janva told me that she has a Bhagavad Gita sloka in her mind when she chants. I always try and remember a verse, some verse when I'm chanting, because, okay, your mind is distracted, but at least it's distracted to something Krishna conscious. Some people keep a picture of Krishna. Some people like to look at the mantra while they chant. Some people like to, look at nature and feel
Television.
Yes. Yeah. Krishna made this television. Just see how amazing technology. It's Krishna's technology. I'm really amazed at Krishna. Some people do chant their rounds, watching TV. I know somebody.
Programmers, they have this how do you call it, axiom, keep it simple.
Okay, keep it simple.
I think it's a good one for chanting.
Yeah,
it's
it
such a
is.
simple thing.
Just chant and hear.
Just
chant
keep it
and hear.
simple.
I know. But we're
Simple
complicated,
things
you
are
know.
some of the most beautiful things there are. Modern people, we have a hard time appreciating simple things. But there's something beautiful about simplicity. Not simplistic, but simple.
Simple living and high thinking.
Yeah.
Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai.
Prabhupada was walking often during his japa time.
Yes.
Walking also, when you engage your body
Yeah, yeah.
and your mind is more peaceful.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's difficult to just sit and have peaceful mind just on the, but when you're moving, you're walking
Yeah.
in the temple or walking around,
Yeah.
then you, at least there is two things happening. Your body is moving and you're trying to focus on
Yeah.
it. Can help.
It can help, yeah.
But he would sit in the morning also.
Yeah, Prabhupada would sit.
He would do both.
Yeah. I have to walk sometimes because my legs will go to sleep, you know, if I sit. I forget all the pins and needles. or to stay awake, you know, just because you start to consciousness. Walk.
But if you say some people look at nature with a chant, isn't this distraction from Krishna?
Well, so I sometimes find it inspiring to chant outdoors, you know, because nature's beautiful. I think, oh, this is beautiful. Krishna made this.
Nature is
Beautiful.
part of Krishna.
Or you can think, you can think of nature. You think, actually, it's a suffering. You know, all the living entities are suffering, right? It looks beautiful, but they're all suffering. They're all eating each other. You know, they're all vying with each other. Trees are all vying with each other for the light and the water. You know, the animals are all planning on which one they're going to eat, you know, next. And you know, everybody's suffering. They all fear. You know, the most prominent feature in an animal life is fear. So they're all fearful. You know, so you think, wow, everybody's suffering. Look at it all. Look at it all. And then you can chant, Krishna, help me get out of here. That motivates me a lot. You know, you see what modern society's like. You think, let me get out. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Let me get out of here. This is a madhouse. Hare Krishna. Isn't it mad? He's telling me he got into spiritual life because he can see it's just not the going right out there. It's becoming more and more crazy, more and more nuts. Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai.